on Prime Crime.
This is the most horrific crime that I had ever seen.
The case that cannot be forgotten.
Oh, God.
Can only someone truly insane have committed these acts?
Did advise you of your rights, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, can you just state your name?
Tim Jones.
The man authorities are speaking to is Timothy Jones Jr.
Timothy Jones Jr. was described as borderline genius and insanity, smart man. He worked at Intel.
Jones was the father of 5 young children out in South Carolina.
Mira was the oldest. She was 8. She was kind of the protector, sort of acted as a pseudo mother. Elias, he was 7. He didn't know a stranger in class. He sat next to all the kids, was very friendly. The 2 youngest ones, 2 and 1 years old, Abigail and Gabriel. Natan was the 3rd child. He had it perhaps the most difficult. The kids were very close, and what was most striking is they loved their dad.
Jones and the kids' mother, Amber Kaiser, had divorced after a rocky marriage. As part of their separation, Jones received custody.
Have you ever been told that you had a mental illness?
By a doctor?
Just anybody?
I've had, oh yeah, you're f***ing nuts, dude. My nickname in high school was the crazy white guy.
Timothy Jones Jr.'s mother was diagnosed schizophrenic, and she had been institutionalized for several decades now. But when he was a baby, his father alleged that she would bathe him in cold water. She would scream at him while he was crying. She would leave him to cry. She was described as a neglectful mother. Tim Jones Jr. had spent some time in prison in Illinois prior to all of this for a stolen car, drug charges. It was completely unrelated. But when he got out, he was obsessed with religious teachings of the Bible.
This became truly apparent by how he treated his children.
I just PT'd his ass till he couldn't handle it.
And when you say PT, and what are we talking about?
Squats and push-ups.
How long were you having them PT?
PT like an hour.
Running laps around the house, doing pull-ups, sit-ups, squats. Those were the forms of punishment when the kids did not behave, at least in Tim Jones Jr.'s mind. And they were always, please, Daddy, please, no, I don't want to, I'm tired. Apparently it was to no avail.
I'm old school in the sense that I think kids should get their asses busted by a teacher.
Jones's discipline of his kids is interesting because it does seem to adhere to a lot of sort of religious doctrine and things like that. But also, I think it has a lot to do with his own upbringing. I think there was a lot of fear about his parents. He's going far beyond what is completely necessary for discipline. I think he sees them more as objects to be treated of and disposed of as he sees fit.
Fast forward to August 28, 2014. After a tense phone call, Jones hangs up on Amber Kaiser. Kaiser continually calls Jones back.
Tim, I'm not calling to argue or anything. I just, for like the past 2 or 3 phone calls, you've been like really on edge. I'm saying you're like coming off really frustrated or whatever. And I was just concerned about you, so please call. I'm not calling to argue or anything.
But her calls keep going to voicemail. After that, Jones and the kids are nowhere to be found. Days later, Jones is stopped at a checkpoint in Mississippi, but there's no sign of the children.
They said he was like sweating profusely, acting a little erratically. One of the investigators, I think he was with the FBI, said basically, enough. Where are the kids? They're missing. What happened? What did you do?
Coming up, what Jones ends up telling investigators still shakes people to this day.
And something happened that night. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you find out what?
Then the hits the fan and all.
In 2014, Timothy Jones Jr. is located by authorities after it's reported he and his 5 children have gone missing for several days. When he's interviewed by police and the FBI, they want to know what happened to the kids. Jones begins to lay out the timeline of events. It allegedly starts from a conflict with his 6-year-old son, Natan.
Natan about 4 outlets that he blew. After a series of not getting any favorable responses out of him, I tried to use more harsh measures to just try to get out of him what was going on because I didn't know what he was doing. Tried cracking more butt a couple times to get something out of him to tell me what was he doing.
Right.
What's his motive? I sent him to bed after I worked him real hard because he wouldn't answer me. I come back and find out that he's deceased.
There were some light sockets blown out inside their trailer. And he thought Natan had been messing with them and was trying to kill him by jimmy rigging the electrical sockets. And because Natan would not admit to that, he started to make Natan run laps around the house for what was described later as hours. Once that happened, Tim Jones Jr. told the investigators he sent Natan to bed, and when he went to check on Natan, Natan was dead.
I worked him too hard, or maybe it was a combination of the electricity. If I would have known it, I would have gotten medical help, whatnot.
It's what Jones does next, though, that turns this story of an alleged accident into a horrible nightmare.
The voices start going off, and then here comes the paranoia. Oh, shit, what just happened? What just happened? And I followed suit with the other 4.
And how did you
So
kill
that
them,
was
Tim?
with my hands around their neck.
Around their neck?
For the first child, it was this excessive amount of physical training. But then for the rest of the children, it was strangulation.
Where I used a belt too.
Used a belt too?
Who do you remember using the belt on?
Babies.
Were the older did they put up a fight?
I mean, what person's not?
It's expected that as soon as the parent sees all this pain and suffering going on in the faces of their children, that they're going to stop. So then what's going on within Jones that's telling him to keep going? He was not viewing them as human beings. He was not viewing them as his offspring. He wasn't viewing them even as just children. He was simply viewing them as objects, things that he could easily get rid of.
You told us earlier that Eli said something to you before you killed him. What did he say to you?
Take me with, Dad.
Did any of the other children say anything before you killed him?
Gabriel said, I love you.
After murdering his children, now Jones had to figure out what to do next.
At that point, I was just thinking, run, get rid of the bodies, and you're f***ed, Tim.
So why'd you buy those trash bags? To do what now?
Put the bodies.
To put the bodies in.
Jones drove around the southern United States with the dead bodies of his children in his car for over a week. He then proceeded to place them in garbage bags and toss them out on an Alabama road.
I just put them off to the side. I knew there was no hiding bags. There ain't no hiding this. I'm gonna get caught. This is just a matter of time. I'm buying myself time. You just drove.
Tim Jones Jr. was driving through Mississippi and stopped at a sobriety checkpoint just like everybody else. And when the officers went up to his window, the first thing they testified was an overwhelming smell. And immediately that officer said he knew that was a smell of severe human decomposition. Had he not stopped at this random checkpoint in the middle of Mississippi, he very well could have made his way to the border, at least according to prosecutors, and gotten away.
Up next, Jones' crimes are sickening, but is he not responsible due to insanity?
They calm the voices down inside my head to let me be at peace and not act on them. This was not premeditated. This was a, oh shit, what just happened?
In 2014, South Carolina father Timothy Jones Jr. admits to law enforcement that he killed his 5 children. He says he may have accidentally overworked his 6-year-old Natan to death after disciplining him. In fact, Jones claims that he punished the boy because he believed he may have been trying to kill him. Jones explains how once he discovered his son dead, he then killed the other 4 children. You would think this would be a straightforward case for the government. However, Jones' statements and actions raise the question of whether he's actually criminally insane and not legally responsible.
So the insanity defense is different throughout all of the different jurisdictions in the United States, but they're all variations of that at the time of the crime was committed, the person did not know what they were doing was wrong. An individual could either not know that it was against the law or that they were somehow unaware that this was a breaking of social norms.
When you did this crime, did you know it was wrong?
At the time, I didn't think any of it was wrong. It happened, and just let me finish it up now.
Okay. When you did the crime, did you know it was against the law?
At the time, I didn't think about the law, so I'm going to say no.
These are all behaviors and actions of someone who is completely unaware of the severity of their behaviors, that they're not in their right mind.
The arguments that support the insanity defense here go back to his childhood and a lot of problems that he had with his family, abandonment, abuse, mental illness. And then he argued that he had a hit to the head, and he had an expert talk about that. That can be compelling to a jury if somebody has a head injury and then acts out.
Once he discovered Tom was dead, he says the voices in his head told him, no one is going to believe this was an accident, so therefore I have to kill the rest of them.
When you did this, did you think your actions could hurt the children?
Yes. It was to protect myself.
Okay.
He has this brain injury. Where the brain injury was, so the frontal lobe, it helps us make rational decisions. With it being damaged, he's no longer stopping himself from just doing whatever his brain tells him to do.
Then again, Jones' acts perhaps show that he did fully realize what happened.
Investigators pulled up some of the Google searches on Tim Jones Jr.'s phone, and one of them was, what do extradition laws mean? There was another search that said canines searching for bodies. He even Googled himself, Tim Jones Jr. missing kids, in the days after all of this. And prosecutors alleged that that was because he was trying to get away with it. He was methodical, he knew what he was doing, he was trying to circumvent the judicial process and get away with what he did, especially with that search as it relates to extradition laws.
At that point, I was just running on fear, and I wasn't thinking. Any normal person would have said, let me call the police and just turn myself in.
Okay.
I took the coward route and started following those voices in my head, which led me down such a nice path I'm on today.
The fact that he had killed one child and then came back and tried to kill the others to cover up the crime, that's key. That shows deliberation and that he arguably was not insane.
Natan was an accident, but you murdered the other 4 children.
Yes.
Okay. Why did you do that?
The voices started kicking and said, you better do something, you're f***ing now, Tim. I've seen people, I've had conversations, I've started to talk with people when there's nobody in the room.
2019, South Carolina. Timothy Jones Jr. is on trial for the horrifying murders of his 5 young children back in 2014. Not only did he confess to law enforcement about the killings, but he explained how he drove around for days with their dead corpses, threw their bodies in garbage bags, and then tossed his kids out in Alabama before police finally apprehended him.
The father is supposed to love his children. Tim Jones loved himself more. The father is supposed to protect his children. Tim Jones was worried about protecting himself more.
Because of a mental disease or defect, Tim could not appreciate legal or moral right from wrong.
Tim Jones Jr.'s defense was not so much that he didn't do it, but that he didn't have control over what he did because he was clinically insane. They made a big point of Tim Jones Jr. getting into a car accident at 15, the traumatic brain injury that he suffered, what that could mean. Pointed out the fact that his mother is schizophrenic, there's mental illness in the family. Lots of different aspects to ultimately try to prove that he didn't have control over his actions. There were internal voices telling him to do this. Tim Jones Jr. was very stoic. He cried a little bit, but one of the things I noticed about when he would cry, he wore glasses and he had a handkerchief, and he would kind of make that crying face. He would take his glasses off and he would dab his eyes, but I never saw actual tears.
The trial was filled with painful moments, but perhaps one of the most memorable was when Amber Kaiser, the mother of these deceased children, took the stand. She first described a chilling call she had the night prosecutors alleged Jones killed the kids.
I heard my son crying, and I asked him what was wrong. He said, "Mom, I didn't mean to." And Tim got mad and said, "Why do you always have to defend the kids?"
But it was when Kaiser read aloud a letter she wrote to her 8-year-old daughter, Mira, she just couldn't take it anymore.
God. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My babies, my babies.
Nobody expected her to break down like that on the stand. Even the prosecutor who I talked to after the fact said that was not anywhere in their pretrial conversations. That came out of nowhere.
After weeks of testimony and over 6 hours of deliberations, the jury reached their decision.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to indictment 188, Mira, guilty. As to indictment 189, Elias, guilty. As to indictment 190, Abigail, guilty. As to indictment 191, Gabriel, guilty. As to indictment 195, Natan, guilty.
I think the jury found him guilty because jurors cannot believe that a parent would kill their child. No jury is going to say, A, that's not murder, and B, he suffers from insanity, knowing that he's not going to go to prison, because you want him punished for that and you want accountability for that.
Now it was all about the sentencing for Jones, life in prison or the death penalty. During this phase of the trial, emotions ran high once again, whether it was when Jones' father displayed a tattoo of his grandchildren on his back, or when Amber Kaiser shocked us all once again.
Do you want Tim put to death?
I personally, myself, can't bring myself to want anybody to die. He did not show my children mercy by any means. But my kids loved him. And if I'm speaking on behalf of my kids and not myself, that's what I would have to say.
I feel enormous compassion for her. I mean, I think that's a real act of grace that she did that. It's commendable, but it didn't save him, did it?
We, the jury, in the above entitled case, now recommend to the court that the defendant be sentenced to death.
At the time of this recording, Jones sits on death row awaiting his execution. As for Amber Kaiser, she's filed a lawsuit against the Department of Social Services, who she claims could have done more to stop Jones.
The case against the state, they knew that he was abusive towards the kids. They had 6 safety plans that they didn't follow up on at all. If you're going to come in as a state, then don't fail those kids. Don't just come in and then stand back and not do anything.
This is a case that took a toll on many. It's been reported that the jurors and even members of the prosecution are still unnerved by what was presented in court. That includes one moment that was incredibly eerie and poignant.
One of Natan's favorite toys, according to his babysitters and his family, was his little Woody doll. And the Woody doll was found in their home after the fact with its head ripped off. It had been torn apart. It had been destroyed. It was placed on the table in front of the jury. And when the prosecutor pulled the Woody doll out of the bag, it said, "Man, am I glad to see you guys." And the whole room went silent. It was very haunting because the doll had been in a bag for 4 years with AA batteries. Everyone expected the batteries to be dead. The prosecutor said, "What a sense of justice." It was an incredible moment in the trial that nobody could have predicted.